And we have a battery of guests joining us right now. Mr. Ashok Tyagi, the whole-time director from DLF, Feroze Azeez from Anand Rathi Wealth, Hemal Mehta, partner Deloitte India, as well as Boman Rustom Irani, the CMD at Keystone Realtors. Thank you everyone for making time and speaking with us. Mr. Tyagi, let me begin by asking you, that entire debate since yesterday about indexation going away but the capital gains rate coming down, what does it mean for the sector? Overall, in your own assessment, will the tax incidence for people in terms of transfer of property go up or down?
So I think, in all fairness, since yesterday's budget in the evening yesterday, I think the Finance Secretary did clarify that indexation benefits will stay till, I think, 2001, if I'm not mistaken. So clearly, I mean, till 2001, really, it stays. Now, if you look at the last 20 odd years, and if you compare 12.5% without indexation and 20% with indexation, I mean, our rough back of the envelope maths, I think people who have bought and are selling properties within, say, a cycle of 9 to 10 years with the indexation of about 6%, I think should be okay. They should be better to break even. But yes, there would be a small window of people who are possibly selling houses, say, in the 10 to 20 years bracket, who may feel a slight pinch. As a total proportion of investors and buyers who come into the real estate market, I think it will be a very small fraction. So I think, yes, has it been a short-term sentiment dampener, especially in the markets? I think possibly yes. But really, from a substantive standpoint, for most of the organized sector players like us, I don't think it should really have any lasting bearing. In fact, if at all, this should make it all the more sort of motivated for the seller of the old property to reinvest the gains in buying a new property, because that is still the best method of saving on the capital gains tax.
Break it down for us, for all the retail participants who are property owners who are watching this show right now. What does it really imply?
Sure. See, indexation going away definitely has an impact. Over the last 24 hours, we've seen, or lesser than that, we've seen a lot of simulations with assumptions. So I'll give you actual data because we are custodian of several clients' information. So 1,686 properties we analyzed to calculate their IRRs, because we had already analyzed what is their IRR. What was their tax a day before the budget and day after the budget. This 1,686 properties were purchased at a 1,400 crore value. The current value is 3,123 crores. Okay. The indexation would have resulted in a tax for these people if all the properties were sold at 3,100 crores. The tax liability was 187. After this budget, that has gone up by 72 crores.
Wow.
For these 1,686 properties owned by 732 families. So the actual tax impact on these 1,686 actual owned properties is 39% increase in taxation for properties bought after 1st April 2001. We have eliminated those which have been bought before 2001, because if you have a property before 2001, you have to make note of this point, which is called FMV, fair market value. That was not being respected before yesterday's budget. That has to be respected immensely after today's budget.
This is for properties post 2021 or pre?
2001.
2001.
2001.
Yeah, because the indexation benefits.
Because everybody's speaking of ancestral property being impacted the most, but I think ancestral property has not been impacted so much. Properties bought. Now, for example, I'll give you a practical example. A property, Crescent Bay in Parel. Bought at 3 crores 10 years back is quoting at 3.5 crores today. A 2-bedroom house.
Yeah.
A person who could have done indexation, the 3 crore value as per indexation today should have been 5.5 crores. But he's selling it at only 3.5 crores. There was zero tax. There was in fact a 2 crore tax credit to him because there is an index loss of 2 crores. So the difference for that property owner is close to 60 lakhs between these two dates. So for different properties, it's different, but ancestral properties are relatively the safer ones than the ones bought in the last 10 years, especially in metro cities. So 39% is the average increase in the taxation between the two dates.
And just to clarify, Section 54F is still applicable, right? If you reinvest it in property, you still get those exemptions.
Section 54 is more relevant for property to property.
Correct.
Section 54F is from other assets to property.
Okay.
If you take a long-term asset and invest the full proceeds back in real estate, even if your gains are not from real estate, let's assume you have an unlisted share, you made money in unlisted share, took all the gains and put it into property, Section 54F helps you save tax from other assets to real estate. Section 54
Which
is
is more
very
relevant,
relevant, but they very cleverly last year capped it to 10 crores. Okay, that was earlier unlimited. Somebody could reinvest, a landowner who has got hundreds of crores of land, he could reinvest any amount of money and get the full exemption. Firstly, that was capped at 10 crores. And now reinvestment is capped at 10 crores.
Capped.
That's the important bit.
37% of an uptick is quite a bit.
39 to be precise.
39.
Yeah.
Boman Irani, hi, morning. How does life change for you then?
I think it's beautiful. Ever since yesterday, the University of WhatsApp has been abuzz with only this one thing about how capital gains, long-term capital gains is going to impact. Let me just say it quite unequivocally that this is actually a great move. It simplifies the entire thing in the minds of an investor, and there's nothing more an investor wants than simplicity or being able to predict without having too much of analysis. One. Two is every move that has been taken is being evaluated from the past. How about looking at it going forward? Just the very fact that you are at 12.5% of long-term capital gains drives up the investment interest in the minds of most of the people. Yes, of course, it does affect. Feroze put it across very clearly about the impact of those who are holding property since 2010 or 15, etc. But listen, it's going to affect some. But look at what's going to happen going forward. I love the simplicity because the more we simplify investments in real estate and the more we bring it on par, and this was our ask actually from the government, to bring it on par with the rest of the financial investments, to be able to allow for more people to take an interest out here. Since you asked only about that, I'm going to keep myself limited to only that query. There are lots of other good things as well.
We'll be discussing a lot of that, but let's just talk about this topic first up. And Hemal Mehta as well is with us from Deloitte India. Can we get in your initial take? You had Feroze breaking down the numbers for us, two veterans within the real estate space as well, talking about how this really simplifies the entire process. Share with us your key takeaway.
Sure. No, I think I can see the smile on face of Boman and Feroze and everyone. I think there are two sides of coin, if you ask me honestly. We did touch upon 54 exemption. Now, actually, if you break this real estate into two parts, commercial and residential, I think the people who are going to sell residential, which is going to be more regular, they are probably going to get hit. Look at this way. Earlier, you did mention about Section 54. And what was supposed to be invested under 54 to get an exemption was only capital gains. And naturally, the capital gains, when you calculate on an index cost, it would be much lower than the capital gains calculated at the cost. Forget about 2001 for a while. When we talk about last 5-7 years. Now, what happens is that, let's say a family who is actually moving from a Pedder Road in Bombay to Juhu scheme, and they want to actually salvage about 3-5 crore rupees from the real estate, they will actually end up paying more taxes because their capital gains actual amount would be close to the sale consideration, and they would require to invest the full sale consideration in the new flat to get a 54 exemption. Certainly, it is a welcome move for the developer community, but for individual investors, probably it is going to hit them hard. They may not be in a position to create liquidity on sale of real estate, what people used to consider historically in India as an investment opportunity. Now, let's look at commercial asset. Commercial assets, we don't see a lot of deal happening on the sale of assets. Commercial deals generally happens on sale of shares. And I think there is a clarification which has come up that 24 months, long-term capital gains for unlisted shares. So probably life is better there. So this is how I analyze between the two parts. How does it actually work for residential, which is a large population? How does it work for commercial, which is a smaller population but high value?
The other way how people are looking at it, Mr. Tyagi, is whether, what part of the properties were being bought as end users and what part was being bought as investors. I know it's difficult to differentiate, but would you have a broad view, Mr. Tyagi, as to what your sales mix was?
Yeah. So, I mean, just an anecdote, the point that Feroze made of somebody buying a property at 3 crores 10 years back, which is about 3.5 right now. I mean, that must arguably be the worst performing property in the entire country at a time when real estate prices have moved at least 2 to 2.5x across most of the geographies, frankly. So I think let's not color ourselves with data of isolated outliers. Having said that, you're right that anyway, we have been seeing a gradual decline in the wild speculators as the industry has taken steps, including us, by simple steps like reducing, like sort of, restricting one booking per PAN card, hiking the initial booking amounts to 5 million rupees now from the erstwhile 1 million that used to be the norm. So clearly, in fact, in the products that we have sold in, say, the last 2 to 2.5 years, the proportion of retrade requests is actually down to a trickle. So people are clearly staying on. And whether somebody sells 6-7 years afterwards, that's not really an investor. But I think short-term speculators clearly would not be there. To the point that was made earlier, I think by both of my previous speakers, this would incentivize the sellers of the older real estate to redeploy back in buying real estate. So in that sense, I think it's a positive for the organized builder community for sure. But yes, there would be potential outlier cases, who with that 6%, indexation could potentially end up losing, especially if their property hasn't particularly done well. The last point I think which was very important, which was made by Boman, was that it is a move to simplifying the entire real estate space, frankly. 12.5% long-term capital gain compares with really the best in the world, apart from a couple of tax-exempt jurisdictions. So 12.5% without necessarily doing your maths and computations for indexation. I think, yes, if there's a short-term uncertainty, I think the market, both the real estate and the capital markets, will tide over it. But from a medium to long-term standpoint, this is a great move towards simplification of the entire real estate sector.
Simplification, Boman, there were also a lot of noise made by the finance minister regarding, some sort of moderation when it comes to stamp duties, and especially some benefits coming into women, etc. as well, land mapping and other details as well. Do you anticipate those also to be significant moves? And what do you make of the overall allocation coming in for PMAY with respect to at least the urban side of things? Were you happy with the amount allocated there?
So that was music to my ears, actually. The central government is actually allocating money to states to kind of build on infrastructure. The second thing, which, we were hearing Neelkant Mishra speak before this, and it's always a pleasure to listen to him. He put it so aptly. He said the real estate cycle has taken off, and, so many industries are seeing an upswing in what's happening. I think everybody at FMO has also realized that this is one industry that can supercharge the GDP and growth. I'd like to say that the move to improve the state's thinking about stamp duty is definitely a step in the right direction. And very happy the center is kind of looking at this so strongly. Again, this was an ask by us because stamp duties need to be rationalized. And in that, giving the Nari Shakti an additional boost by saying there should be a further reduction for them will allow this 50% of the latent market to actually get started out. I think, look, if you look at the overall budget, the intent of the government has been to spur the economy, to improve skilling, which is such a good long-term move, infrastructure spend, connecting the various parts of the country, thereby allowing for what is the predicted move to, let's say, tier 1 cities and bigger cities over by 2050, where 70% of our country is going to be, in urban areas. These are moves preparing for that in the long term. Infrastructure spend is great. Upskilling is great. In the words of what I read this morning on from Sanjeev Bajaj, I would say this budget was very well coined by him by saying "Bahut khushi, thodi gum," and overall the intent of the government has been extremely what they had done in the interim budget, and they're moving in that direction. Great move.
And Feroze, you're coming to a point on principally paying tax on real returns, and that is something that this move as well is bringing about. If you'd like to elaborate a little bit more.
Avanti, what is the concept of indexation? The government empathizes that inflation has eaten away the purchasing power of your money. To the extent it actually reduces the purchasing power, you should not pay tax on it. It's not about higher tax and lower tax. On a capital asset which I've been owning from already tax paid money which I earn, at least for the depleting portion of purchasing power, I should not be taxed, whatever that rate be. Now, for example, if my property, now 1676 properties, we calculated the IRR, which most property builders don't calculate IRR, they always speak in multiples. So 8.1% was the IRR of these many number of properties owned by 732 families. If 6.86% is the inflation, the real return is 2.1% for 11-year holding period average. 11 years of holding period. So if I've made only 2% after the inflation, I paying tax on 2%, which is my real return, is so fair. Now you tax me 20%, 30%, 10%, that's not the point being made. Principally, I should pay tax on real returns, not on total returns. India's total return on their household savings is as little as 6.7%, give or take, which we computed for the 800 lakh crores. So Indian households are not even making real return on their overall portfolio. If you remove the indexation concept, not for real estate, but for all assets, you are telling people that you will have to pay tax on total return, not real return, which principally I tend to disagree.
Hemal, you want to come in here? And I'm curious to know what kind of queries have you been getting on taxation since yesterday?
No, so I tend to agree with Feroze. I think Feroze has done a lot of homework over last about 12 hours. I think the standard queries which we get are from the individuals or the companies, corporates who probably are owning a large real estate property, which is residential. On the commercial side, as we discussed, it's more of a deal at the corporate level, so that's not much of a worry. I think the real point is that are people going to pay money from their real return or a perceived return on the value of their return of their capital gains is something we really require to balance the equation. More or less, I think as Feroze studied, to my mind, I think the outflow of an average Indian resident on sale of property is going to be higher at 12.5% on an average. There might be exceptions, and there may not be enough liquidity event which will be available for many Indian households, which was one of the intent of yesteryear's generation to actually hold real estate and keep it for a longer time. So, like of family settlement issues, successions, when people require to sell one real estate and buy two for children, those issues are really going to become difficult. Other side of the coin, I think the developer community is going to actually have much benefit, and they probably will see a higher sale because an average Indian mindset is not to pay tax on the real estate residential sale. Rather than that, invest in a better property. So I think that's how the two sides of the coin actually work out.
Mr. Tyagi, just wanted to come back to the point and discuss DLF in a bit of a detail. We do understand that you're looking at venturing into Goa as well. Any reality to that report, and what's the plan there?
Yeah, so I mean, there is a reality to it. Yes, that we are venturing into Goa for sure. I think we should have a launch of a luxury villa project coming up in the definitely within this fiscal.
All right, and Boman, if you would like to share a little bit more about your plans, plotted redevelopment. You've acquired some land in Thane. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the potential is on development and the plans for this plot?
Yeah, I can tell you, look, plotted developments have done extremely well in other parts of the country, whether it's Hyderabad, Bangalore, even NCR, Chennai. And we see that there have been no organized real estate developers that have been doing plotted development in Mumbai. So this is our venture at Rustomjee to kind of bring plotted developments because everybody wants to own a piece of the earth and give them peace of mind in that, simplicity in acquisition, and give them a location where they can go and spend a weekend with their families. We're going to create the entire infrastructure around everything it takes to kind of have a great weekend. And who knows, someday with the way Mumbai is expanding and we know that the MMR boundaries are continually growing, these parts could become a larger part of the larger city itself. And with the infrastructure growth, which is what I keep commending the government on, they've done such a fantastic job. A journey that would take 2.5 hours today is going to be dropping down to less than an hour in less than the next 5 years. So all of these are making it extremely interesting for product development. We have made a huge foray in it. We've just about launched one or about to launch one, but the rest of them are all in the wings and we are definitely going to roll them out. Other than, of course, what we do with redevelopments, which is the need of the hour of Mumbai city, where we continue to move towards now the South Mumbai part of it as well after having a good grip on the western and eastern suburbs. So we're great.
Taken on that, but Feroze, just a question with respect to the overall portfolio allocation, and we were just discussing how property still forms a large part of people's saving. Going forward, will your advice and recommendation with respect to the portfolio allocation change a bit, given the kind of announcements that we have seen yesterday?
No, actually, it will not change. We have always said that residential real estate in metro cities does not compound at double digit.
True.
And I've done a study on several builders launched projects, okay, and trying to find out what is the weighted average IRR of all builders, especially the public domain builders. And double
Any
digit
observations on DLF or Keystone?
No, I would not get there. But all I'm saying is double digit returns in residential, apart from rental yield, is very difficult to achieve in metro cities. I'm not speaking of going to a Nagpur and buying it and then having a smaller base of 5,000 rupees a square feet, that becoming 15,000. If you in Bombay buy a property at 70,000 rupees a square feet carpet, in 10 years, if it became 2,10,000 rupees a carpet, that is 12% return. Right, 12% compounded return.
And that's
implies
not happening.
2,10,000 rupees. And as when we broke down a property's life stages, the initial 7-8 years it appreciates a lot more. Then it gets into a stagnant phase. So point is, asset allocation will not change. When I meet an HNI, we have 10,382 families. If I look at their current asset allocation, which we gather information, including real estate, the average 1/3 money is already in invested real estate other than the homes they live in. So 35% already there. My recommendation for the last 8 years for metro real estate, especially on economic times, at least the print, has been to stay away from them because you will not make double digit return. And equity markets can give you double digit return. It's not because of the bias, because they already 1/3 is there.
So dilute that and allocate higher to equities.
That's what I would recommend, especially given the fact that there is 1/3 of the total wealth in residential. Like Sir said, one of the co-speakers said, commercial is a different ballgame. If you have the size to go into commercial, get that 66-7% rental yield. So equity for 5-year plus monies can give you double-digit returns. And if you choose a mutual fund, which we did, you can beat Nifty by about 4.3-4.4% for the last 11 years. So 13-14%, that's, and 12% tax. So I think residential real estate is what I'm speaking negative of, especially in metro cities. And builders are the best to judge which are the micro markets which can do well. I'm no one to actually have.
I think that is what Mr. Tyagi is doing. They're venturing a lot into southern part of the country as well, and Goa, as he talked about. But I just wanted to wrap up the conversation by asking you, Boman, you were listening into the conversation with Neelkant earlier, and he was talking about the real estate upcycle. Where do you think we are in this cycle? Because anecdotally speaking, at least the calls I've been getting to purchase property has been increasing, which makes me feel that there's a lot of push with respect to the sales that you have to do right now. Is that the case? Plateauing of demand a bit, at least in the key metros?
The other way of looking at it is that we've just about upped our game and have reached the same status as other marketing, as other companies would, do with their marketing. So I think it's a great move. It's just how you look at it. There's a lot more opportunity, and while Feroze spoke about double-digit returns, there's something to say about stability of investments. And given the fact that any portfolio would have to have the entire gamut of investable assets, I think real estate will continue to be a part of it. And just to give you another number, Feroze, 66% of Indians want to feel the real asset, whether it's gold or whether it's real estate. So you will have to keep that in mind and keep it as part of your portfolio guidance as well.
No, just one last question that I want to take with Mr. Tyagi as well. Overall, with respect to your guidance for the year, Mr. Tyagi, are you on track of achieving that double-digit pre-sales growth? And do you expect the momentum to really continue even at the upper end of the properties?
Yes, in fact, I'd say especially at the upper end of the properties, the way the markets are right now. I mean, it's really the luxury and the super luxury which actually are demonstrating very strong legs, at least in the markets we operate in. So I think we look on track to hopefully meet and maybe slightly exceed our guidance.
Okay, gentlemen, thanks so much for making time and speaking with us today. Really getting a bit more clarity with respect to what this taxation means, how it will impact the consumers, and how should, if at all, you change your portfolio with respect to the changes that have been made yesterday.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.